Hello, everyone. I nearly didn't get here because what the hell's going on with pavements in this town? It's crazy. There's a story in itself. Madness. So thank you very much, and thank you for that introduction. Yes, I'm John. I'm from the BJTC, but as Jackie quite rightly says, my background is a bit wider than that. And I thought today we'd take a time talking about what accreditation is very briefly, but also a bit more about mobile journalism, which I'll explain in a moment. I listened very intently this morning to the experiences of some people in print and also Alison's experience with what's happening at Trinity Mirror. And it certainly chimes with what's happening in broadcast. So, what is the BJTC? Well, you'll recognise some of those logos up there. We're supported by the BBC, by Sky, by Channel 4, by Skillset, AP, ITN. They all make big programs, they make telly programs, but they also have big online presence now, and that's how the industry's changed. And we accredit 68 courses in the UK, so there's quite a lot of students that are being accredited by the BJTC, and when they finish their course, they come out of the course with a certificate with all those logos on saying, you know, you have got the acquired skills that you need to go out and find a job. And I've met quite a lot of the students that are on the whole college course over time, Kai and others, wherever you are, all around. And they, I'm sure, would back me up in saying that when they leave, the third years leave this year, they're going to feel ready and fit to go out and work in industry. I thought today, though, for the purposes of today, I would ask some of our friends from these media organisations to give us their tips on what you need. If you're beginning to start thinking about being a journalist and you want to work in telly or radio or online, what do you need to be thinking about? How are people working now? And they, well, quite rightly told me that the biggest change for them in the past 5 years has been social media and has been mobile phones. The brilliant news is, hands up if you've got a mobile phone. Hands up if you're on social media. Wow, you're better than I am then, because I only got to know about social media a few years ago. You guys have probably been using it all your lives. So, I thought today we'd look at how you could properly use your social media to tell stories. First port of call, decided to go to Radio 1 and speak to my friend Anna Dobel, who comes from Harrogate originally. I gave her her first job in London. She became a radio journalist originally when I was editor of an outfit called Independent Radio News. She's now the big bee's knees running online for Newsbeat and Radio 1. So let's go and talk to her and see what she has to say about finding stories specifically using social media.
Hi, I'm Anna from Newsbeat at Radio 1 and I've snuck you into our studio. So, social media, we use it to tell people what our stories are and what we're talking about, sometimes a lot quicker than using one of these. But most of all, we use platforms like Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram to try and find stories and find people to talk to in those stories. Most newsrooms have a diary. We don't, we have social media alerts. Okay, we do have a diary, but we only use it as a last resort. We care lots more about what you are talking about right now.
There you go, that's Anna, and I think the interesting thing there is that they don't necessarily look at a news diary or look at what other news organisations are doing. They actually go and search social media to find out what you guys are talking about, what you're doing on social media. So I thought, okay, I was putting this presentation together on Sunday evening in my home, and I thought, I know nothing about Hull, and I would like to know what's going on in Hull. I need a story. If I was going to come and work in Hull today, I would like to know what's going on in Hull. I need a story. If I was going to come and work in Hull today, my editor of the radio station, or Radio 1, if they were looking for a story in Hull, would want to know a story, and I know nothing about Hull. So here's a few tips of what I did. I got my phone, and remember, when you're searching social media, you must use the language that you and I use chatting in the pub or with our friends or with our mates. It's very informal, so think of key words that people would use. It's a big tip. And what I did was I searched on Hull, oh my God. Where did I go to do that? I went to Twitter. So there's a bit of Twitter. Now, I know this is difficult to see at the back, but this is our BJTC Twitter page, and I'm going up to the cursor. This is me on Sunday night, live on Sunday night, and I went to the search box, and I put in Hull, and I put in, oh my God, to see what came up. What's someone saying? Go down to this timeline. There's someone saying, oh my God, I nearly got arrested. That's probably a story. Oh, look, Liam Sharp. Oh my God, I just heard Eats Everything is coming to Hull. So I click on Liam Sharp. Who's Liam Sharp? Well, there he is. Let's go down. He says, still can't believe Eats Everything is coming to Hull Festival. So all of a sudden, someone is talking about a festival in Hull, talking about Eats Everything, who's a DJ, by the way, for those that didn't know. Who knew that Eats Everything was a DJ? Just checking. Oh, a few people. Very big, apparently, in that part of the world. Anyway, so we now know that someone's excited about Eats Everything. What I'm going to do now is try to find Liam Sharp. Now, on Twitter, I could direct message him if he was following me, but most people on social media will use their same name for different platforms. So, where do we go next? People's favourite place to talk about what they're doing? Any suggestions? Sorry? Facebook. So let's try and find Liam Sharp on Facebook in Hull. So here we go, onto Facebook. And again, a recording of me doing that's the BJTC Facebook page. And I go to the search box up here and I put in Liam Sharp Hull and see what comes up. And bang, bingo, there he is. Click on him and we now know he's called Sharpie. That's his, look, there we go. We know all about Sharpie now. Look at him, bless him. And we also know he works at El Capitos. Do people know that in Hull? He's a barman at a Mexican bar. So all of a sudden, we're suddenly getting to know what Sharp is all about. If we go down here, he's also tweeted a post from a guy called Terry Spamer. This is shared a post, and Terry in that acknowledges that he's the organizer of the HU1 festival. So we click on that, get a bit more detail, go down here. Let's find out a bit about this festival. Oh, there we go. So we click on that, and there's the festival. So now we know that there is a festival. It's called HU1. There's a few people excited about a DJ called Eats Everything. What we want to do next, though, is find the organizer. And we've established the organizer is this bloke called Terry. So what do we do next? And this is probably my biggest tip of the day. We get very excited about social media. Do not forget about the king of search engines, because it can be very useful. And the king of search engines is? Sorry? Google. Absolutely. So as an inquiring journalist, I go to Google. No Terry Spamer. So what I put in here is Terry Spamer in the search box and telephone. Because often someone on a website might go, my telephone number is, or telephone, or contact. And if I come down here, you'll see there's several Terry Spamers. But on one of these listings, we find out a bit more about Terry and his user profile in his day job. There we go. Bingo! We now have Terry's mobile number and also his home phone number. We even know his address. He lives in Rye Street or somewhere in Hull. So all of a sudden, we're able to contact Terry, who's the organizer of H1, and talk about the festival. So in just 3 clicks of 3 websites, what have we learnt? We know there's a music festival. We know it's Eats Everything coming. We know the event is on May the 28th and 29th, because he said on Facebook. We know the organizer is Terry Spamer. And we actually know both his phone numbers. So if I wanted to continue that story, I could phone him up and do a radio interview with him or record him and embed that audio on a website. And that literally was just by putting originally Hull, oh my God, into Twitter. So there we go. Simple as that. That's how you are a journalist. That's how you can be a journalist. Right, so we've talked about finding stories, which Anna referenced at Radio 1. What about breaking stories? How is mobile and social being used to break stories and to cover stories? And for that, I asked my friend Michelle Livesey, who works for Key 103, which is a radio station in Manchester, to tell us what she does during the day.
Now, Nowadays, as a multimedia journalist, it's all in the title, multimedia, and in that sense you need three hands really. One for recording your audio, two for filming a video while you're out and about on the scene, and three for trying to take pictures, text and tweet. It's a task in itself. Just arrived on location now at the scene of whatever is happening, and the first thing that I think about doing is tweeting a picture. So you only actually get 30 seconds on Twitter now to do a quick video. So the best way of doing it is upload your video, ready to go, hold your finger down and start talking. So I would therefore say, I'm here now at the scene of where police say a suspicious item was found this morning. Officers were called about 9 o'clock. It just means that you're showing people that you are at the scene, because at the same time, when people are on their Twitter feeds now, they're looking for pictures and they're also looking for video. So as well as listening to the reports on the radio, you're instantly providing people with an update of what's happening at the scene. Another thing to think about is if, say, I was at Manchester Crown Court now and I'd just done a court case, just got the verdict through, again, you know, the first thing I'm going to do is record it for radio purposes and send that report back, but then I'm also thinking about what can I do for video. And an ideal opportunity is to use your selfie stick and do a piece of camera of you outside court, just updating people with what's happened. So again, very simple, set it recording, you've got the background in, and it'd just be a case of, well, I'm Michelle Livesey on the steps of Manchester Crown Court, where a woman has just been found guilty of murdering her husband. After a 2-week trial here, it took the jury. If you're attending, say, a bigger story, so something that's got a bit more oomph to it, if it's a parade, if it's the opening of something, if royalty's coming to visit the area, then you can start using an iPad, because in that sense you're going to get many pictures, you're going to get lots of scenes and shots that you can capture, put together as a professional video, easily edited via iMovie or any other editing package. And it just means that, again, by the time you've got back to the office, you've got all your instant stuff, you've got your Twitter pics, you've got your Twitter videos, you've got your audio for online, but you've also got this extra bit of a video which you can put together when you get back in the office and send that out there. And we've had it where national media have actually picked up on it because they've not been able to get there, but they've liked the look of what we've done. And again, you know, it's a professional looking package and they use it themselves. It is like you do need an extra hand, because some points, if you were at a press conference, you're trying to get the video, you're trying to get the audio, but it's just the knack of doing it, and it's getting your mind into thinking, I need to get these things and what do I need to do first. So back at the office, and obviously I've sent all the things out I need to do instantly, so I'm going to sit down and start looking at the professional video that I want to put together and get loaded onto the website.
There we go, an explanation of what a radio journalist is doing currently in terms of social media and covering stories. And it's quite strange, actually. I was having a conversation with Alison from Trinity Mirror over lunch, and the biggest change has been we don't really use big microphones as much anymore. We still do, occasionally, but more likely we're using our phone, which gets better interviews, actually. Rosie earlier was talking about interviewing and getting the best out of people. If you use your mobile phone now, he said, reaching into his pocket, it's not here. I'm lost. If you use your mobile phone for an interview, people are less worried about having a mobile phone shoved into their face for an interview than they are a great big microphone. So actually, it breaks down barriers. So that's one good thing, an added thing that mobile journalism's brought to us that we didn't even plan for. So, we've talked about finding, we've talked about breaking and reporting. One last area is how stories are used. And a specific example here is between Facebook versus YouTube. What do you think the differences might be between the two in terms of using video? Any thoughts? Sorry? Time. What do you mean? What do you mean by time? Sorry? Facebook only lets you have a minute and a half. Okay, yeah, it is about time, actually. Let's find out from Sky News. The reason I'm going to Sky News for this is if you guys, when you finish your course, are applying for a job at Sky News, the latest question they're asking interviewees is, could you please explain what the difference is between using video on Facebook and using video on YouTube? They're not asking things like, what do you make of this story? They're actually asking, what you're doing specifically on each platform, which is quite interesting. And we've got two guys. We've got Peter and Richard. Peter runs the sort of home news desk, and Richard is responsible for the social media on Sky, telling us about this. Very interestingly, Sky have just changed the way they produce content, and now the focus is very much on the website and online and on mobile, and the television is a byproduct of what they do there. So this is their explanation of how they treat platforms differently.
Hello, I'm Peter Diapra. I'm an assistant editor at Sky News, and I'm with Richard Evans, who's our social media editor, and we're going to explain the difference, well he is, we're going to explain the difference between a YouTube video and a Facebook video. Now Richard, what is the key difference? Is it just one's longer than the other?
So it is that, but it's also a variation of other things. So let's look at the Sky News January statistics. On Facebook, there were 150 million video views for Sky News content in January. The average watch time is about 40 seconds. Compare that to YouTube, where we only had 4.5 million video views for the same month. So we're getting many more video views on Facebook at the minute than we are on YouTube, which is quite new to the industry. The average watch time of our content on YouTube was 15 minutes. So we're getting way more people spending a lot
long form type of...
Exactly.
Yeah.
People are watching content for longer on YouTube. And that's for a number of reasons. One of the main ones is why people use Facebook. So people use Facebook to primarily find out what their friends are up to, lifestyle, scrolling through what their family are doing. So it's our job as a news provider to try and grab their attention with our content, which is why shorter content works really well on Facebook, also where people are much more likely to be using their phone. YouTube is much more kind of desktop friendly. People go to YouTube because they want to watch a video specifically. That's the only reason for YouTube. So those are the two main points that I would say differences between Facebook and...
There you go, everything you need to know about the difference between a YouTube and a Facebook video.
So it is about time, but it's not just the time aspect, it's actually how people are using those platforms. And it chimes back to what Alison was saying this morning for those of you that were here. That's knowing how your audience are using and consuming the news you're putting out. And that's the latest from Sky. So if any of you apply for a job at Sky in the next 6 months, they're likely to ask you that, so you know all the answers. So that's about it from me. Let's just recap on some of the things that we've learnt so far. Use everyday language when you're searching. Dare I say it, but you could put Hull and then a naughty word, for example, and you might find someone that's really angry about something that's going on in Hull. You could put Hull and angry. In fact, if you searched on Hull and angry at the moment, you would have someone talking about pavements. I know, because I tried. If you search Hull and accident on Twitter at the moment, you'll find out about a bus accident that happened a couple of days ago and where it was. And also, if you search on Hull angry, there was a guy that did a rooftop protest in Hull, is that right, in the last 24 hours? He was on a roof, apparently. So I've read from Twitter this morning, and I found that about by searching Hull and angry. So again, some examples of using everyday language. Think instant when you're updating, just as Michelle told us when she was on the scene. People just want to know now what's going on. Worry about the detail later. One size doesn't fit all for every platform. There's been a lot of talk about being platform neutral in terms of the stories we cover, but when it comes to the coverage and the output, you do have to think about how people are using different platforms. And finally, you need 3 hands. You absolutely need 3 hands to do this job as a journalist covering all things now. And one last point, I spoke to someone that works at a radio station, free radio in Birmingham, when I was putting this together, and I said, one tip from you, and I have actually got it on video, but we didn't have time to use it, and she said, yes, here's the tip. What you learn now will be different in a year's time in terms of what people are doing in the industry, and that's so true. What we have to keep firm and focused on is that there are phones in the room. What we have to keep firm and focused on is we're all storytellers, And it doesn't matter where we're telling the story, we just need to be able to tell that story correctly, accurately, clearly, and with our audience in mind. So thanks very much for spending some time listening to that today. Oh, apparently I meant to say, are there any questions? Sorry. Sorry. Are there any questions? No, thanks very much. Bye. Have I scared you? Yeah, go on. Yes, I did. The first job I ever did, I'm sounding really old now, was in print. My background was in print, and then I moved into radio, a very traditional route, and then ended up at ITN making telenews. And my first ever job was actually in a very small district newspaper office. On my first day, I walked in, and there was literally, back then you could smoke in offices. I know, outrageous. And this guy had a fag hanging out of his mouth, and he gave me sort of £1 and said, "Go to the newsagents and get me 20 cigarettes." And he was really aggressive, and I thought, oh, what's this all about? Oh, God, is this journalism? And then they dumped, and I think they do it as a bit of fun. Has anyone sort of seen council minutes? You know, you get council agendas from council meetings. They're like a different language. And they dumped this whole pile on me, job 2. Go through that and find a story. Well, you know, goodness me. And I remember going through it, and I found there was a woman's name in a council minute called Christina Christmas. How could you possibly forget that name? And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I read, and she'd written a letter to the council saying she was frightened that parachutists were going to fall into her garden because someone wanted planning permission for a parachute school next to her garden. And instinctively, I thought, well, that's something I'm quite interested in, and I'd tell my mum if I went home, because that's quite funny. So I thought, well, that's a story, and I took it to the news editor, and he said, well spotted, there we go, there's your story, go and get it. So it was daunting to begin with, but you just got to have confidence in yourself, know that you can, what am I trying to say? I'm saying that you need to be confident, but make yourself indispensable. Think what you can do that will make that person's life next to you more easy. And if you can find them a story or come in with a story idea when you're working in a newspaper office or in TV, then that's very helpful. Anything else? Yes? Yes. I think there's less and less difference, actually. I think there was probably a big difference or some difference when I started in the 80s, but now with so much coming together of how we tell stories, it has changed. But in essence, it's still about telling stories. It's still telling the story I just demonstrated about the Hull Festival, coming to Hull. You still need to know the facts. You need to know when it is, where it is. You need to speak to someone that's organising, whether you want, because you want original quotes for your newspaper piece, or you want to speak to him for the radio or the television. So it's really just those component parts always remain the same. The difference in terms of working in a newspaper office now is that you are actually, a bit like Michelle working at Key and other places, you now have to think more. When I first started in newspapers, it was a notepad and a pen, and occasionally I took out a camera, but there was a camera, a snapper, that usually took that picture. Now you do have to do everything. So, but I think the difference has changed a lot. I think that it's much closer together now. What you do on a newspaper, you would do at a radio station now. Yeah. That's a good question. Depending on where you want to work and what you want to do. So the BJTC doesn't have a requirement for shorthand because primarily the background of the BJTC has always been within broadcast, within the broadcast environment. And if you work in broadcast, there's less of a need to use shorthand, although it's very useful. So we're kind of agnostic, I hate using that word, we're neutral about whether shorthand is, it needs to be on a course. But if you're offered it and it's an opportunity, I would recommend that you do it. However, I think for broadcast journalists, it's less of a need, and I think some of the other people that look at journalism training may have come to that conclusion as well. So shorthand may not be a requirement going forward. Certainly there's only one broadcast employer that asks, have you got shorthand? And that, not the BBC. The BBC don't want you to have shorthand, don't need you to have shorthand. The one broadcaster is Sky Sports News, not Sky Sports, not Sky News. Sky Sports News, that news channel, that the person that runs that at the moment requires people to have shorthand. That's the only broadcaster in the UK. Yep. How do you make sure that you're the first person to get the biggest story? When a story breaks, you mean? If you hear about a story? Sorry? Be quick. Be quick. Be sure of your facts first. That's very important. But be quick. So be very quick on this technology that people are using. How fast can you do an iMessage or a text message? If I said to you, text now that you're seeing John Godel do a presentation in Hull Truck Theatre, how quick could you do that? Within 10 seconds. And that's what you need to do when you're a journalist now on the scene. If you see a fire, there's a fire on the high street, snap, send. Then you'll be first. That's how you ensure that you're the quickest. Anything else? Oh, is that someone at the back? Oh, right, okay, fine, fair enough. He's just from a radio man, I didn't recognise he was holding a microphone. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone. Cheers.
Cheers, John.